1. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending where you are. Daniel, stop messing with your camera.
I'm here, don't worry.
Daniel, we are live.
I'm here.
Yeah. You always do that to me. Whenever I click on the live button, then you have to do some last minute changes. Either you choke on Dr. Pepper or you're on mute and now you're moving your cam.
It happens.
Yeah. And now there's 3 of them. So look at this. So we have a special guest today. Let me go to the next slide so that it's easier for everyone to follow. So Daniel and I are happy to welcome Dov. Dov, who's from Cybersixgill, is joining us for this special today. We're going to talk about the dark web. And Dov is a person that eats, sleeps, lives, travels in the dark web, right? Dov, can you introduce us?
You just described my life.
Yeah. He's taking a break from the dark web to come
I know, I came up for air and then I'll go back under.
Okay, good. Well, while you're with us, we might at least enjoy it. So for everyone who's joining us live, there's a chat. The chat is open. Do not hesitate. Say hi to us or give your feedback. Only nice things, of course. I will moderate the chat. I don't know if I can do that, but I will try to moderate it. If you have any questions, also put them in the chat. We are here, and we have Dov in the middle of us. So whenever there is a question about the dark web or there's something you wanted to know about the dark web, but you never found anybody to ask it, go ahead and put it in the chat, and we will take it as the questions come. So without further ado, I'm gonna pass the word to Dov, and you might have the controls. Dov?
Okay, thank you. So the first question is, what are the deep and dark web? Because the dark web has all this mystique and mystery, and everyone wonders, okay, is this where I buy an assassin? Or is this where I can read tomorrow's headlines? Or I don't know, communicate with world leaders or aliens, whatever. So I want to unravel that mystique and speak in a little bit more clear terms. What are the deep and dark web? And then even more importantly, what types of intelligence can be derived from it? So I believe I clicked. 1 second, let me try again. There we go. So we have Tor, and Tor is the Onion router, and that's how to connect to dark websites. So with an Onion extension, I think Daniel's going to explain that in more detail. But we also have Telegram or Discord or QQ or Pastebin, GitHub. All of these make up the deep and dark web, in that the deep and dark web are a realm in which actors and individuals, people like you and I, and that they are real people, and they're communicating and they're talking with one another. And so I think, yes, there's sort of technical definitions, right? So a dark website is a site that connects to Tor. The deep web is anything not indexed by Google. So our WhatsApp communications or our private Facebook messages are considered the deep web. So the deep web itself is enormous. So I think if someone says yes.
Yeah. So our modems, for example, are those considered deep web?
Exactly. Anything not indexed, by Google.
By Google. Okay. So we need to say not indexed by Google, because if you look at Shodan, for example, Zoomai, they also started indexing now modems and IP cameras. So should we still consider that deep web? I would think so, because it's not conveniently accessible, but still.
So sure, but this is why instead of deep and dark web, I prefer the term cybercrime underground, which doesn't mean all of the deep and dark web, right? The cybercrime underground is the criminal elements within these realms, and that makes it much easier. If 2 people are talking on a dark web forum about cryptocurrency, doesn't really interest me. That's something that they can legitimately discuss on that channel. If they're talking about a new malware or credit card fraud, all of a sudden that's part of the cybercrime underground. So what I'm saying here is we can look at these different definitions and get bogged down in exactly a lot of Venn diagrams of what includes what. But ultimately, I like to look at it in these ways. So first of all, it's a space for anonymous commerce and interaction. people exchange things and people just talk. And also it's a community of communities. And by that I mean that these users know one another. These sites and forums and everything are connected. Someone who's active on a Tor site can also be active in a Discord channel and say PM me on Telegram. So we need to understand that they're all connected to one another. They're not really taking place in a vacuum. So yes, we have the deep and dark web from the technical definition, but conceptually, this is how I like to define it and then derive intelligence from it.
Makes more sense, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, it's a very good question to bring up because things are constantly shifting. I mean, what we call cyber criminals and threat actors is today being labeled as privateers because, sometimes threat actors are working with government, but they don't have necessarily the funds or they're just being protected. So yeah, these terms are constantly shifting, and what we know is one is definitely going to be evolved into something else in the future. I like what you had said as far as just criminal underground, well-defined way of saying this is where crime is happening, right? And so a lot of the questions of like how
not only crime, I would say, because now we are putting a label there. That's somewhere crime is happening, but we will see later on in the slides. Not only crime, journalists will use it. People who want to stay anonymous, protesters who come together, and so it's not only about underground. It's also good, legitimate stuff that is happening.
To be fair, I think a lot of law enforcement officers out there would happen to say that those things, as far as leaking information, talking to journalists, might actually be a crime. Now, I understand that underneath whistleblower acts, they might be allowed to do that, but still, it might be considered a crime.
Right.
But like in general, go ahead.
No, so what I'm saying is, again, we have the deep and dark web, right? My university's library that requires a login is the deep web also, right? My personal WhatsApp messages to my friends are the deep web, right? So as researchers, that's not interesting to me. I hope not interesting to anyone else, right? I mean, these are things that no one needs to know about in terms of relevance for meaningful research and protecting your organization. So again, I think instead of this mindset of deep and dark web, we should zoom in on what is the crime going on there. What are the things that are relevant? Because it's very easy to get lost in definitions and semantics, which whatever, and it's also easy to get lost in the amount of data out there. And ultimately, as a researcher, as an intel analyst, I want to find the stuff that's valuable. I don't care about everything else, all the noise. I want to find the needles.
So let's call the tools what they are, which are Tor. So Daniel, that's what you were gonna.
Well, there's a couple then, right? So like in general, not to go into the definitions again, but in general, we have what we call an overlay network, right? And these overlay networks were created about 1970, and they were considered basically an isolated part of the network where you had to have special encrypted tools to be able to get to that area. And so that's what we kind of have today with Tor and I2P, is that we have these specific tools that we're going to use to reach these deep and dark parts of the internet. A lot of people use these for different reasons. They provide somewhat of a layer of protection and anonymity. It's not a silver bullet, but it does help kind of obfuscate your origin. And this is kind of giving people opportunity to start being a little bit more free online and share the fact that they're selling drugs or they have this information in exchange. So the first one I want to talk about is Tor. This is a very, very, very popular one. Everybody's basically using this at the point. And Tor competes with I2P, but Tor is a very simple click, click, click download piece of software, right? It doesn't really require a lot of configuration or anything. You just simply go to the website, you download it, you're ready to go. And Tor is a bi-directional network. So it's basically going to set up a bunch of different guards and relay nodes and exit nodes that you'll go through to actually get to the point of destination that you're going to, where I2P is a unidirectional tunnel. So it's going to require a couple different outbound and inbound tunnels to be able to transfer that traffic. Now, when you download I2P, you're going to have a lot of different configurations that you'll have to go through. And it's not really as favorable as Tor because it doesn't have as many out proxies, right? So people prefer Tor over I2P because it's faster and the information is more available. Now, if you go to the next slide, this is just one thing I want to throw out there about Hunix. Hunix is a very interesting platform. It's basically taking the Tor browser, it's throwing it inside a gateway VM, and then you also have a desktop VM. So everything that you're doing inside your desktop VM is being Torified through your gateway. and it's going out. Now, this is something that more advanced criminals would be using, this, Cubase, a couple others, as far as obfuscating their origin, because they really don't want to be caught. And this is kind of like a one-time thing that you can set up and burn very quickly, and there's going to be no real forensics left, depending on how you go about it. So I just want to throw those two out there and show kind of people what these services are.
So
and
how safe is it to use those? These exit nodes, for example, wasn't it at some point in time that like 46% or something of the exit nodes was owned by one organization or person at some time?
Yes. Now, I think that even the famous group Lizard Squad tried to do this, where they set up so many exit nodes. It's a general 51% attack. If you control most of the network, then you can actually start stripping data and trying to find people's origin IPs from that way. I wouldn't necessarily, that's why I say Tor is not a silver bullet, right? Like a lot of people just downloaded this and assume that this is their only option in protecting themselves. In reality, like when you look at criminals with someone like Whoenix and Cubase and all this, is like you're going to have to proxy and chain a lot of things together in order to truly protect your origin IP. If you're just downloading Tor and you're going to random websites and you're a novice, you're probably going to have like Java on, you're probably going to download something, you're going to compromise your identity.
Your ISP knows you're using Tor also.
That too, yeah.
So you're already, you're already a suspect.
Yeah.
Depending on where you are.
What was the old saying? I forget, in the hacktivist days, it was VPN before Tor, feds at your door, or something like that. It was a really funny saying about how to proxy these different or chain up these different tools to try and hide your origin. But like Dov said, at the end of the day, the game has changed. ISPs and everybody out there have an eye on everything. So there's ways to figure out certain things. But I'm not going to go too much deeper into giving our friendly criminals out there listening how it's done. But yeah,
it's an arms race.
Exactly. Yeah, it's exactly, and it's not, as I said, it's not a silver bullet. So don't expect it to protect you completely from everything.
Yeah, to your point about random browsing on Tor, it is very slow. If you're random browsing, then that means that you have a lot of time free or time left, because it's so slow. And one of the reasons is, and that's the whole design and the whole idea behind Tor, is that not only the person that's accessing the service is anonymized, but also the service itself is anonymized. So what happens in Tor when you set up a connection, it's not like TCP that you go straight to the server and then immediately set up a connection between two of them. No, you create a rendezvous point somewhere in the middle, and then you go to that middle point and the server goes to the middle point, and then you both come together, and then you're connected, and then you see the data flowing. So you don't know where the server is, the server doesn't know where you are. So that's the whole idea of Tor, to provide this anonymity concept. So it's slow. It makes it very slow.
To add to that, because it's so slow, the dark web sites are majority text, because images and definitely video takes a very long time to load through Tor. So if you go through dark web forums, markets, everything, they're just very boring text-based sites.
And another thing to throw in there, I've noticed a lot of the sites online are using both clear and dark web addresses. So like if you necessarily don't want to waste the time going through Tor and you want to just direct access to the ClearNet, you can absolutely do that too, which adds to the complexity of the situation. Yeah. But it's kind of funny. Like I sit there and you assume that the only people that are downloading Tor are criminals, right? Like it's just the amount of news and information you hear coming out. But there's tons of people that use this, right, Dov?
Yeah, I mean, before I started at Cybersixgill, before I got into deep and dark web professionally, it was something of a personal interest. I wanted to see what it is. People are curious, and that's something that I think anyone who's interested, as long as obviously you do it safely, is fine. But I'll go to the next slide. And more broadly, then who's actually using the deep and dark web? So yes, we have the bad guys. As I said, the cyber criminals, whether it's fraudsters, a lot of people are financially motivated, as well as social engineers who are maybe selling phishing templates, malware users, black hat hackers, narcotics dealers and users, traffickers of illegal goods and services. So all of that is there. It's all in the dark web and the deep web. It's in huge quantities. Sometimes when I'm reading through these posts and forums, I have to sort of remind myself, like, this isn't normal for a person to be offering this type of service, but it's there.
Right.
Or, for this many credit cards, I'm like looking at, credit cards and names and addresses of people whose credit cards are compromised. And that's like, you feel bad for them. I mean, there's so much data, personal passwords and everything, and it's really all there. I mean, all this data we see every day in huge numbers.
One of the things I find strange about the darknet is the impact that it actually had on physical crime. For instance, narcotic dealers, right? Silk Roads, I think we all know Silk Roads is kind of the thing that put, in my opinion, the darknet on the map. I mean, it's what got general people interested in what was going on. It was kind of like the first forum and website where people were freely trading things. There was reviews that were going on about quality content. But this also led to a shift where people aren't necessarily standing out in the corners anymore selling dope. That they've figured out that they can actually sit behind proxies, they can sit behind Tor, they can sell this dope, and they're pretty much removing. It's almost like their risk analysis, that they're looking at the fact like, oh, we're going to get arrested if we stay on the street, so let's go hide on the internet, which has opened up a whole new avenue of users, in my opinion, to the darknet.
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
actually,
There is a movie about Silk Road, by the way, for those who are watching and they want to learn more and how this all started out and how this works. The movie is actually quite good. It's entertaining.
Yeah. So actually, a colleague of mine did a fantastic research report about narcotics during the COVID lockdowns, where the amount of drugs being sold on the deep and dark web went way up. And the presumption is it's both supply and demand, right? So supply, these dealers couldn't stand on the street corner because there are curfews and lockdowns. So now whoever still had a physical shop had to go virtual. And I guess demand, people were bored at home with nothing to do. So that's a separate issue. But there's a clear correlation between deep and dark web activity and what's going on in the real world.
Which is crazy. I mean, who would ever thought that a COVID pandemic would lead to a spike in users on the darknet?
You shouldn't be talking about that. That's still coming down the road in the presentation. We're building up to that, Daniel.
So, if anyone just wants to skip to the end, no, you can fast forward this slide. You can fast forward. That's the best part. Okay, so who is active on the dark web? Let's say not the bad guys, right? So we have white hat hackers. I would say something I see that's very typical is a lot of security operators, right? So people who are involved in InfoSec in their organizations, right on the deep and dark web, and they're participating in the forums, and they're asking how to protect their organizations. And that makes a lot of sense, because if I am a security practitioner in an organization, in a bank, and we have a huge gaping vulnerability, and for whatever reason we can't patch it, and I want to know how we can work around it so we can still be protected, right? So completely legitimate use case. I don't want to expose who I am and what organization I work for. So I can write totally anonymously on the dark web, and people can help me out. And so we have these white hat hackers, and professionals who are active on the deep and dark web because they want to protect themselves and defend themselves. So that's something that I think when I got into this research, I did not expect to see it there, but it's there. We have hobbyists. So gaming, crypto, currency, and technology, right? People are discussing the new iPhone. Gaming, I'd say there's a huge overlap in the gaming community and the deep and dark web user community. So people are discussing Fortnite or Roblox or whatever the latest game is. Dissidents, people who obviously want to remain anonymous from their governments, and this is their avenue to do so. There are plenty of journalists out there as well, and law enforcement and intelligence agencies and security professionals. So whenever you're reading a post on the deep and dark web, I always think of that Spider-Man meme, right, where Spider-Man pointing at himself. And that's something I'm always careful about, right? Meaning, does this person sound like a security researcher talking to another person that sounds like a security researcher, or or are these actual dark web threat actors? And that's a very important thing to keep in mind before I say, hey, I just got the golden nugget of intelligence. Okay, how believable is it? So again, for our definitions, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to build off of that, the cool thing from my perspective as a research analyst, going onto the dark web to talk to these criminals. Like, first off, we're researchers that will go out here and we'll find the activity, but sometimes we actually talk to them, and it's strange to me because I feel like they are more willing to strike up a conversation when you're using these tools versus just straight in the clear. That they feel like they have some protection and they are a little bit more open to share and exchange free thought ideas type of thing in these communities.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's very interesting. I mean, I've read several interviews with these administrators of forums or things like that. It's pretty cool to see what what they say.
That's what makes those forums of interest to us, right?
Absolutely.
Because as they open up, they are sharing too much, and that's when you get the real intelligence and the real information that you needed.
And just another thing to jump in there about the distance and journalists, that there was an old project. I'm trying to find it actually at the moment because it just reminded me. It was in 2016, I believe it was, when there was the assassination. Yeah, 2016, when there was that live assassination in Turkey. And it was a very sad situation, but the Turkish government moved in very quickly to start blocking, Facebook, Twitter, all these types of outlets. And if you look through the metrics of the Tor project, it's crazy to see what kind of resources this is to dissidents and people in areas that are being censored. Over 30,000 people joined Tor, like within just a week of this happening, because they had no other outlets. Wow. So it does help these people get information, and as we'll get into a little further, there are media outlets, there's drop boxes, there's all kinds of different things that will help these people in oppressed regimes, underneath pressure regimes, get information out there and talk to people like us and let us know what's going on inside those regions.
Absolutely, and therefore, I think from a broader perspective, this isn't inherently evil or inherently good. It's just like most things in life, how you use it. So.
Yeah.
The bad guys always find some reason or better to use technology for their ends. So
absolutely. So the column on the left, for our definitions, we call those threat actors, right? Anyone who's posing a threat to someone else is a threat actor, and again, the legitimate users on the right column are actors simply, and we try to filter one another and focus on the threat actors. So if you hear me use the term threat actors, then that's what I'm referring to. Okay, so moving on, what are the types of sites on the deep and dark web, right? We have a lot of the channels where I threw them all up in those logos, but let's look a little closer. So first of all, we have forums. Forums have different themes, sub-themes, and languages. Think Reddit, because Reddit is very similar in structure and function to deep and dark web forums. Obviously, topics are different. Forums have established sites, user bases, and relationships, right? It could be that two actors, they don't know each other in person, they don't know who or where they're from or anything, but they've been communicating with one another for years. And that's important because there's a certain element of trust. There's an element of, I know you, you have a reputation. If you're on this forum and you need X, go to that guy, he's the best. On forums, there are discussions, and forums have a lot of different categories where each one is related to different discussions. There are moderators who keep people on topic, but there also are transactions that take place on forums. Usually the way it works is they'll say, hey, I'm selling blah, blah, blah. PM me on Telegram, hit me up on Discord. So, or PM me on this forum through the forums function. PM function. So therefore, the important thing to remember here is a lot of the stuff we can see that's going on in the forums, but because so much is taking place in the DMs, I like to call that the dark web of the dark web, because we really have zero access to that. And so we always have to remember, if someone's wrote a post that they have something that's selling a database for some financial company, and no one responded to the post, that doesn't mean that no one was interested. That probably just means everyone responded privately because nobody wanted to out themselves as interested in it.
Exactly. Yeah, one other interesting thing about forums on the deep and dark web is they're actually susceptible to normal attacks, right? So like in this example here that we have Dread, like you said, it's like a Reddit of the darknet. had serious issues staying online with service availability when they were dealing with a series of DDoS attacks. And DDoS attacks do happen on the Onion network, and it is a very real thing. And so, these forums themselves are not bulletproof. That they exist in this realm, but they can still fall to just simple little attacks.
Oh yeah, and DDoS extortion as well. Well, at least if it's true, but I believe it was it Darknet that was attacked by DDoS and extorted by the attackers to pay. So they had to pay. I don't remember if it was Darknet or another one.
There was a marketplace. I remember conversations about it that it was basically someone was launching DDoS attacks against a marketplace to increase their cost of doing business. Back to my
well, they had to pay as well because he was
Yeah.
extorting them. So they had to pay. But yeah, the whole thing, the whole controversy is go ahead, Daniel.
That's the same thing as the street gangs, right? Like if you want to stand on the corner and sell dope, you're going to have to pay a tax to some kind of street gang or whoever owns that territory.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, all these people shift to the darknet and they start selling drugs without having to pay a tax. Of course, there's going to be a criminal enterprise that comes in and DDoSes them and says, "Hey, you have to pay me $10,000 a month not to get attacked." It's just that's normal business across physical and digital.
Now thieves steal from thieves.
Yeah, well, and then the whole controversy there is that, well, those are illegal businesses, so they are also not afraid of doing exit scams, for example, right? so
they're gonna call, right?
Exactly.
Nobody was sure.
Saying,
I
bought my cocaine from this website and they never delivered it.
Oh yeah. But in this case it was about those DDoS attacks, but we don't really sure if those DDoS attacks happened because right after that they said that they stopped their whole business because it became too costly. They did not make enough margin. It was too much work to keep it up and to keep it working, so they just stopped. But it could as well been just an exit scam, just an excuse to give out to the people and say, hey, bye bye, we're gone with your money, because at some point they just pulled the plug and there was still money in the account. So we're not sure if it was actually true or not, but yeah, it is an option, the ransom DDoS, not only in the clearnet but also on the dark web.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Anyways, so in addition to forums, we have messaging apps. Now, messaging apps, again, like Telegram, they have different themes, sub-themes, and languages. There are some channels for messaging apps that are very established, right? So those more reflect forums, but they're also very ephemeral channels. So something will pop up, be around for a few days, and then go away. There are discussions and transactions. Now, as an Intel analyst perspective, it's very difficult to find any methodology of producing data from these things or intelligence that's actionable, because it's really a back and forth of messages. And the users, unlike forums where they have these established user bases with reputations, anyone could get on any Telegram group and write whatever they want, and it's unclear who it is and where they're from. So there is a lot of good intel in messaging apps in these groups, but it's a little bit more difficult to produce. So I would say that requires a little bit stronger methodologies that you know what you're looking for.
So what would you typically do there? Yeah, sorry, Daniel, go ahead first.
I was gonna say from my perspective, that's why I love the darknet so much, is because it gives me protection and it gives criminals protection. But at the same time, if you're thinking one step ahead of them, it's not that difficult to social engineer your way into these groups, where all of a sudden like, hey, this group right here is saying these things, I need to get into this group. A little bit of legwork, and a few days later, boom, you're sitting in their private chats getting everything. There's a lot of mistrust on the darknet in both directions.
Absolutely.
So Dov, to connect or to collect information from those messaging apps, what would you typically do? Would you look for keywords in messages, or?
I look for keywords. I'm personally a big fan of quantitative analysis, meaning I like to look at, if there's a difference, if there's a trend in mentions of something. So a great example that I had was transfers, which a transfer service is essentially money laundering. After the COVID lockdowns, again, there's this unprecedented spike in cybercrime overall. I noticed that there was a rise in transfer services being offered on Telegram channels, meaning that there was, I would say, blood in the water, right? These threat actors knew that there's a lot of money coming in from crime and fraud, phishing, ransomware, because of these COVID lockdowns caused all sorts of chaos, which is very well documented by a lot of research out there. And so a lot of other actors said, hey, if these, if these ransomware operators, if these phishers have all this money now and they need to move it, let's offer transfer services. And so they're offering these secondary services in these Telegram groups in order to profit from this windfall. Whether these services were real, legitimate money laundering services or total scams where they're just going to steal from the thief, that's a good question. And apparently a lot of them are just stealing from the thief. But again, I noticed a huge spike in the number of PayPal and also Cash App transfer services in the light of all these phishing incidents.
Oh, wait, we have a question on the chat. Let me...
Cool. Person by extracting or having some.
Where is the...
Okay, so this is a very difficult question that
yeah, and it's a good one.
Yeah,
we've been talking about this before. Yeah.
So the question is, can you be imprisoned by extracting or having sensitive information from the dark web? This is a very tough one, right? It really depends on where you live.
It is an easy one. Yes.
The world. Well, I mean, I'm just to be honest and say no.
Can you? Well, really can you?
Where you are.
Yeah.
You can, but like I said, it depends on where you are in the world, right? Like some of these issues that just recently came up with, I won't go into and expose their names or anything, but there was a recent a person that was hit with a ransomware attack, right? And that information was downloaded by third parties and was reported upon. And that was kind of looked at as an unethical thing to do. There are certain ethics involved in what we do as far as getting that information and verifying a breach and verifying the information. But in our job, it's never to publish that. And so that is where you get in a lot of trouble. When you extract and you download that sensitive information and you begin publishing it, you will definitely get into an issue there. Now, another side of things, as
just downloading it is enough, no?
Well,
just having it on your system.
You're going to go to a ransomware author's website, their PR site, and then you're going to start downloading all these files from the Tor network onto your computer, unverified, unchecked. It's a risk, right? And that's the thing, is like when people like us do it, we're doing it into sandboxes and VMs that we're going to detonate at the end of the day, right? And other people are just like, oh, let's just click and download this. It's not going to be a problem.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be a problem in the long run, depending on what country you're in and what you do with it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so be careful when you're on the dark web, because you use the right tools and do it preferably from a sandbox environment, especially when you're visiting sites that you never visited before. You never know what crap comes down from the dark web. The same as on the ClearNet, but on the ClearNet, at least you know and trust most of the servers that are out there. They can be compromised, of course, but on the dark web, I would say that 90% you don't know and don't trust. So be careful. And just visiting, and the reference that Daniel made was
actually there's I got another reference to bring up about legalities of this, and the Baduk group, the group that just hit the Metropolitan Police in Washington, D.C. There was a gentleman in DC that downloaded that information and began alerting people in the criminal community about the information that the police had. Now, that is clearly a crime, and they're going to come after you for it.
Well, yeah, but the police actually announced that they would go after the people who downloaded this information, no? Weren't they saying that?
And that's the thing, is like they're not really, like, unless they're stripping Tor and using
not going
technology.
After, but they said something about it. It's illegal to download this information or something like that, or it's a crime.
Right. The point I'm getting to is, like, unless they're stripping the Tor traffic and going to every single ISP and figuring out who accessed it, which is requiring a lot of legwork, it's probably not going to happen. The reality is,
maybe they already own 50% of them.
Well, the point is that I'm getting to is, like, they're going to get you through human or signal intelligence, right? You're going to say something on a social media platform or something like that. Like Dov said, the keyword's going to pop up. Law enforcement's going to have access to some kind of tool. And they're going to say, hey, look, this guy in Washington, D.C. downloaded all those files, and he's telling gang members, like, to be careful. They won't actually know his IP that he pulled it from the Baduk servers. They're just going to see him being reckless because he doesn't have OPSEC and general issue. Yeah.
Exactly.
I hope we answered that question. Just in general, don't download things if you don't know what you're doing. If you're a professional.
Thank you for the question, Dave. It was a really good question.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Yeah. Okay, so the next category of channel on the dark web is paste and repositories. So whether it's Pastebin or GitHub also, and again, GitHub, 99.9% of things on GitHub are totally legitimate. It's a website owned by Microsoft. I don't want anyone to think that I'm saying GitHub is a
Right.
dark web crime. Having said that, there are also exploit codes published on GitHub. Now, an exploit code could be a legitimate thing for a researcher to use and test out in a pen test, for example. Or an exploit code could be something that someone's using to attack an organization. So this is where, as I said before, the definitions of deep and dark web can be blurry because it really matters what the intent is, how an actor is actually using this.
Do you consider GitHub deep and dark web, or?
So again, GitHub, it's not dark web
because they have many
POCs
POCs out there. No, I am just joking because we did a rant about this, about people, security researchers actually posting fully working exploits and proof of concepts of exploits. So.
Right, and or for example, credentials. Sometimes people upload
accidents.
Credentials to GitHub.
Accidents happen. Yeah.
Exactly, or on purpose.
A direct example of repos on the darknet would be something like GitLab. Something I see often is criminals hosting their own personal GitLab on their Onion, and that's where they're hosting their malicious scripts or whatever it may be. But that's what I see from my perspective as far as repos.
How hidden is that information? Actually,
well, I was going to say, Pascal, wasn't the Brickerbot, the janitor, wasn't he communicating? Dr. CY that was communicating on a dark, was it deep paste? It was a paste site on the darknet.
Yeah.
Where he was talking about the DVR attacks.
Yeah, he was blogging out there. Yeah, he just pasted his blogs out there so that people could find it, and then he posted emails from several aliases to reporters to let them know, hey, I posted my ideas on my blog over there. Just go read it.
Yeah, but as an example, there is a threat actor right there that is trying to communicate with white hat researchers and trying to protect his own identity. I find these paste sites very enriching from an intelligence perspective because most of them are like an open book. You can just search through them, and it's crazy what people are advertising, what they're selling, even what they just give away for free. It's
absolutely.
What I was
that's why, like,
go ahead.
No, sorry. That's why I like to, again, I wrote huge haystacks, but there is valuable information, right? This is dumps of data, and you need a way to find, again, what you're looking for, find something interesting, because there's a lot of stuff that's just not relevant. So it's important to be, as I say, methodical about your search.
So I had one question for you, Dov. On the ClearNet, we all know how indexers and crawlers, how they get to their information and how they do that. Would you say that on the dark web it's the same methodology, only it's a little bit more difficult and you need more human researchers to actually find the interesting sites to start crawling and go deeper? Or
so I mean,
without telling too much, of course.
Right. So again, in the company that I work for, Cybersixgill, we collect automatically from a tremendous number of sources, and the collection is automated. I can't elaborate beyond that, but yes, there are ways to collect in an automated way, but it can be tricky. By the way, one thing to add, another interesting thing that's can be seen a lot on Paste or repositories, or also, by the way, Twitter, is there can be malware, for example, that pulls an image from a Twitter account, and then there's some sort of dropper or downloader. The payload is concealed in the image as stenography. Right, so pastes and repos and again, images on Twitter can be used in some sort of attack chain. So that's another really cool way that this comes up. So again, it's really about knowing what you're looking for, having a broad idea of what the function of the site is and how people use it.
So we have one more question.
Yeah, sure.
So
this is a good one.
If it is not out of scope, what are you guys thinking about DPR Ross Ulbricht story?
I mean, I have my own personal opinions that are not related to Radware Threat on this one. But it is a sad situation that happened. You have to really trust the people that you're working with and that you are doing these things with. But at the same time, it was a groundbreaking event. It was a cornerstone for things to come. And I personally necessarily do not believe it was a bad thing. I like the review sides of things. I think that it was bringing safer access to people. While I don't endorse it, I think that if people are going to do it, you need to be aware of what you're doing. And they brought in a market in which people could buy and sell drugs and talk about the quality of content and remove bad dealers from the market. This is something that the DEA and the police can't even do on the streets right now. So in a way, this was a great thing. Now, depending if you work with the law enforcement or if you're on the other side of things, you'll have severe opinions about it. But I believe in chaos, and I think that this was a great thing to have happen. We can learn from it. We can close loopholes, but
that's typically how things start, right?
I feel bad for Ross at the end of the day, and I think in the future someone will end up pardoning him. I don't think he's going to sit in jail for the rest of his life, but just like the Pentagon Papers and anything else, like you're going to have to sit around in jail for a little bit. People are going to have to talk about it, and sooner or later you will be released and you can do your thing. But at the moment, it is a very sad situation for Ross.
Yeah, that is unfortunate that sometimes we need that wake up call, somebody who does something who's out of the norm and that does not get accepted, just to see that a couple of years later they're doing exactly the same idea but in a different way, and then it's done right, and then it's legal. So
that was what I was going to say, is like some of these things that were sold on the Silk Roads are actually legal now, depending on which country you're in. So it's a shifting.
It also takes crime away from the street. Well, Silk Road was selling weapons, but having a marketplace where you can buy and sell anonymously also lowers that barrier of criminality, where people can actually shoot each other or get hurt.
Yeah.
But okay, but that said, it's a very thin line, and we're in a very gray area. So
yeah, that's what we're just gonna leave it there. But yeah,
but good question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the last category, we have there we go, markets and credit card markets, and so these are dedicated sites to selling, right? So whereas the forums you can think of conceptually are similar to Reddit, these are much more conceptually similar to eBay. Again, not saying eBay is the dark web, just that there's similar function. So on these markets and credit card markets, you have a zero trust environment, which is very important. Everything on the deep and dark web is zero trust. So how do I know that I'm buying something on a dark web market that's legitimate? We have seller rating, feedback, escrow service for buyer protection, meaning I'm going to pay, the market administrator takes my payment, and only when I confirm that the good was received, the goods were received, do they pay the seller. So in this way, markets are able to function, and markets make a tremendous amount of money, because if an administrator can set up a market where there's a zero trust environment, but there's still buyers are confident to buy and sellers are confident to sell, and then there's a lot of money to be made. And we see anything on these markets being sold, whether it's compromised credit cards. We found, I believe, 110 million compromised credit cards in 2020, which is an insane amount of credit cards. We have digital items for sale as well. So that's access to endpoints, RDP access, credentials, things like that. And then we also have physical items being sold on dark web markets. So those are your drugs, weapons, tigers, for example, things like that.
I want a tiger.
Tigers,
exotic. There is a market for
a little one,
well.
a little one.
When Joe gets out of jail, I'm gonna hit him up. We're gonna start a darknet marketplace. We're gonna sell exotic fish.
Yeah. Onion tiger.
Onion tiger.
Or tiger onion something. Anyways, so
tiger
these
lily,
are Yeah, so the markets and credit card markets, I would say, are very focused just on selling. There's feedback, but you don't find the discussions that you'll find in forums.
Yeah, and I have to say that the markets and the carding markets are very ruthless. As you say, you see a lot of people's data being sold, and it's really hard to see it. And then there's other information starts like physical attacks, where they're selling information about how to actually get into these ATMs and do jackpotting hacks and all kinds of other things that transfer out of the digital world back into the physical. We look at so often that things are going from physical to digital, but also there's a lot of things that are going on inside the darknet that are going from digital to physical, such as these things. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to your point, Dov, so on the darknet market, so the top three categories are still drugs, weapons, and payment card data. So credit card fraud is out there, and it's pretty much the highest category of I would say digital fraud of things that are being sold on those darknet markets. Now, to give you an idea on darknet markets, and here you have a good nice graph by Chainalysis. So the people who are watching the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency transactions and flows on the different darknet markets that are out there, and that's of course based on number of transactions and the volume of money that has been transferred between different places. But you can see that right now Hydra is like taking 75% of the market, and we will come back to who's Hydra. But some big names out there is Dark Market, who recently was shut down by the authorities, so beginning of this year. So they're not there anymore, and that's typically what happens to a lot of those markets. They get shut down by the authorities, or they do an exit scam. That's what makes those marketplaces not so long running. However, Hydra is apparently a very big exception, because they have been long running. Now, to give you an idea of the total revenue, and that was also in this report from Chainalysis, and we will put the link in the descriptions below to that report. 1.7 billion in 2020, and it took a big jump again in 2020, because we all know, because of the pandemic, 2019 2020, everybody started to go online. Well, even in those areas, people started to do more online trading, online selling, online buying, trying to diversify their revenues, right? And people who sit at home, well, they need to buy from somewhere. They cannot go out in the street, especially not after dark. So yeah, there's one way to do it. And you can deliver it in pizza boxes, or so if you watch the movie like Silk Road, watch this movie. You have a good idea how they are trading, how it's working. Now, talking about Hydra, and there you see the revenue of Hydra. So I said 1.7 more or less is the total revenue. 1.3 billion of that comes from Hydra. Now, Hydra is by Russians and for Russians, meaning that it's all in Russian out there. Most of the things are happening in Russia. They also use many Russian sites to deliver things that you buy. The success, apparently, of Hydra is because they keep their users in line, and they also have very strict requirement on sellers. Like, for example, every seller needs to have at least $10,000 in their account, accessible at all times. They can only cash out after they do 50 transactions, which make them a serious trader on the platform. There's no coming and going. So they're very serious about that. And then there's also innovation. So, and there's an article in Vice, which I will also put the link in the comments below, that was talking about the innovation that Hydra brings, such as training an army of couriers that are how to use dead drops for fulfilling drug deliveries in Russia. So they are performing this complete innovation and quality for their audience, which is buying and selling, and as we saw, it's mostly drugs, weapons, and credit cards.
One of the interesting ones that had just happened recently was, I believe it was the Dark Side group that got removed. There was they had to put a certain deposit onto the form to operate on the form. There's allegedly a threat actor that compromised a client for them and was not paid. And allegedly the form used their deposit to pay their fee. which is very interesting from my perspective, right? So they're being the middleman, and they're holding this money as a sign of good honor, or whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they used that money to pay someone that had committed a crime. So like while hosting the site and letting people have freedom of speech on the forum is one thing, but when you're actually giving that money that they deposit to a criminal that has knowingly compromised a very large client, not client, but a customer, not our client customer, just company. My bad. It is a problem. Yeah.
I think just operating the website even is enough, because you're aiding and abetting criminals. If you give them a way,
you go to make the payment.
Yeah, but not only the payment, you give them a way to communicate without anybody else being able to see what they're communicating about. So you are aiding and abetting criminals, however you turn it. Once you operate a website, either forward or a marketplace.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Even though you say, I didn't do anything illegal, I'm against drugs, I'm against weapons, I'm against criminals. Well, no, but you still gave them the way to communicate, right?
This is also the assumption that the operators of the sites are not actual law enforcement either.
Yeah.
You know, there's the possibility that some of these sites are actually run by LE, and they don't care about aiding and abetting. They just want to have.
And there is a gray zone.
Yeah. I always find it strange when people want to take things down, because immediately it's like, no, you should sit on and gather intel.
Think about WhatsApp. There's criminals who are exchanging messages in WhatsApp. So WhatsApp, are they aiding and abetting a criminal? I think they have enough lawyers to put in the right disclaimers there. So I think it's more about disclaimers than anything else.
These are questions when you also talk about disinformation campaigns and everything. These are, I would say, fundamental questions about the internet, right? Just because you own a platform and run a platform, are you responsible for that content? And that's Section 312, I think, right? The law. I mean, again, that's what it says. So there's a legal element to this, and then there's the ethical element to it. But these are
right back to Ross. What did he do? He ran a website. Other people sold drugs.
I mean, there's but these are questions as a society that there are a lot of good arguments in each direction. We really don't have a good answer for it.
Yeah, we're not going to solve it right here.
Sorry,
maybe in the next episode.
But see, that's why, back to the Silk Road thing, that's why I love to see these things happen, because they set precedent and we start looking at these things from a new perspective. Until someone does it, it doesn't exist, right? But when someone does it, then we can actually start looking at it from a risk analysis point of view. We can actually start assessing the threat and understanding what we need to do about it.
Yeah, for sure. So now let's actually look at the bad stuff that happens on the deep and dark web, right? So if we took our threat actors, our social engineers and hacktivists and fraudsters, we can measure each type of attack.
Daniel is getting swatted.
You know what? It's going to happen one of these days.
live on YouTube. So we can look at attacks on this plane between reward and sophistication, right? Now, I would say that I think I clicked here. Here we go. So the majority of threat actors who are operating on the deep and dark web, and I know it's a very derogatory term, but they're script kiddies. They're not these expert hackers wearing hoodies in their parents' basement with the Matrix stuff going on behind them and smashing on their keyboards. A lot of them, I would say, are skewing on the younger side of things, teens, 20s. They don't really know how to write code. They're not expert hackers, but they come on and they figure out how to do things. And that's actually one of the more, I would say, challenging phenomenon that's going on in the dark web, where someone can acquire this information. I want to learn how to hack. I can log onto the dark web's forums and I can learn how to hack. I can learn how to do these things. There are enough tutorials and guides and methods out there that someone with a little bit of knowledge but a lot of curiosity and maybe some bitcoins in their pocket can figure out how to do stuff, and they can chain together more sophisticated attacks as time goes on. So that's something where
the hammer is definitely a threat.
Absolutely. And again, it's the motivation, right? If someone has that risk or that tolerance to commit crime, they don't care from an ethical, legal perspective, then they can do a lot of damage. So the script kiddies, is sort of a death by 1,000 paper cuts, but there are tons of them on the deep and dark web, and they
Do
can
you have
cause
an
a lot of
idea of
damage.
age?
So again, I would say, I mean, they're teens, 20s, 30s.
They have a lot of time. Yeah.
They have a lot of, exactly, right. So they have a lot of time on their hands. I would say, you know, yeah, and again, it's this motivation and curiosity. White hat hacker, black hat hacker, the thing that connects everyone in infosec, I would say in general, is a fascination with understanding how things work and how things can be broken, and that's true across the board. And so they're interested in how things can be broken, and then want to take that next step and actually break things. Um, Moving up, we have the proficient hackers. These are people who actually know how to do things and can actually carry out a more sophisticated attack. On the deep and dark web, generally they're selling their services. So they're selling access to a website. I have shell access to a site. I can monetize it myself, or I can just sell the shell access on a dark web market, and then someone else can purchase it and use it for whatever they want. So that's a lower risk but lower reward type of attack. They're selling maybe ransomware as a service, spyware as a service, things like that. Then we have the crime syndicates, which have the proficient hackers involved, right? So I would say ransomware group is considered a crime syndicate, botnet operators. What separates them is the crime syndicates also have physical infrastructure. So they have money mules, they have bank accounts, they have ways of transferring money. Maybe they've bribed local politicians, or they're able to act with impunity in certain countries. And so these groups, because of their skills and because of their resources, are able to carry out much larger crime. But again, there are fewer of them out there. Again, the size of the circle indicates roughly how many there are. Then finally, we have our APTs, our government actors. These are there in they are certainly there, but nobody on a dark web forum is going to say, hey everyone, my name is blah blah blah, and I am a hacker for the Chinese People Liberation Army, and this is my address, and these are our targets of reconnaissance. They don't do that. They're not stupid. So we know that these APTs, these government actors, are out there, as I showed in the previous slide, but they're not going to identify themselves. And so if you're going to look for them and want to find them, you'll be disappointed. They are there, but again, you're not gonna find them.
Yeah, another thing to throw out there is, we started with definitions, and I guess we can go back to definitions. They slowly change over time, and what you said about the criminal syndicates and APTs is absolutely true. But what we're starting to see now is that there are some people that operate inside the criminal syndicate space that have the blessing from their government. They're not necessarily on the payroll, they're not necessarily an APT group, but they are still kept underneath the wing of their government and somewhat provide some protection. I think Cisco's calling it profiteers. People have all different types of terms for it, but yeah, there is this weird evolution that's happening where, and we'll get into a little bit later, where some of these groups and people are learning or stepping from one to another, right? Script kiddie is not always a script kiddie. A script kiddie will learn how to code, and they'll become a proficient hacker and offer DDoS as a service. And then maybe one day a criminal syndicate might need to pick them up because they are DDoS specialists, and APT groups DDoS as well. So it's all an evolution of the actor as well.
Yeah, absolutely, right. Meaning someone starts as a script kiddie. Again, if they have that skills, capability, motivation, they climb up the rank, and then they get noticed by someone. And
yeah, you don't see 40-year-old script kiddies getting arrested. You see 40-year-old ransomware authors, and people are committing serious crime at that point. So it's natural evolution that you're going to learn how to crawl before you learn how to walk.
This slide is actually career path, right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah.
Update LinkedIn.
Same around there. Anyways, so also these, if we want to now look at reward versus the complexity of attacks, to understand the threat types, I would say they also follow a certain progression. So on the deep and dark web, the types of attacks that we see in large quantity are the checkers, which are and crackers. So these are credential stuffing tools or brute forcing tools. We see those a ton, more than anything else. I mean, one of the use cases of the dark web, one thing that people want more than anything else is just a Netflix username and passwords that they can watch free stuff, or Disney Plus. So they're tremendous amounts.
Yeah,
And
or they want to use it for ransom campaigns.
also they could use it for spear phishing too, things like that. But again, these are dime a dozen types of attacks, and basic fraud and spamming and phishing. These are attacks where, again, they're lower complexity, lower reward. Then you have crypto miners, then you have ransomware, and within ransomware you have a whole world of from bad ransomware, I mean ineffective ransomware, to really good ransomware that you have to pay for to decrypt. So again, as we rise in complexity, we also rise in reward. And keep in mind, again, we have our script kiddies are operating in this area of things. So this is what they're mostly dealing with. And the proficient hackers are dealing with the ransomware and crypto miners and the known exploits. And then we have our crime groups like MageCart operating the card sniffers, right? Or skimmers, as others call them. So they are there on the dark web, for example, the credit card sniffers, but you won't find a lot of about them because most people don't know how to use them and inject them onto sites. So only the top groups are using them, and they're not necessarily advertising that on the dark web. And then we have our zero.
Go
Yeah,
ahead,
sorry.
sorry.
No, go finish your thought.
Oh, I was gonna say, from the Radware's perspective, a lot of times what we're seeing is we're seeing like bot herders, people that are going out there and building botnets for the purpose of DDoS and DDoS as a service. Realize that there's sometimes possibly more money to be made in crypto mining, and so sometimes you see those threat actors make that evolutionary jump from launching DDoS attacks to just compromising routers silently and trying to make a little bit of money, and especially with the increase of, well, I guess now decrease, it's not so much, but a few weeks ago, there was a huge windfall profit for these people, right?
Yeah,
so,
or hackers for rent. Yeah, they just find somebody who wants to pay them, and instead of using their botnet to do the actual attack for themselves and trying to extort people, they just sell their services to competitors.
And one of these things like this chart, crackers and checkers. Like if you're buying a compromised account, it might be like $1, but then you go all the way up to zero-day exploits. They go for $1 million. So
Exactly.
there's a lot of profit in between those two for a threat actor to decide which realm they want to be in.
yeah, exactly. And the 0 days, again, those are the realm of the APTs and government actors. And you don't see someone on a forum saying, I have a 0 day for Microsoft Exchange. Anyone interested, right? Those are
You see them on Twitter, though. Sorry,
I walked right into that. Okay, that was well deserved. Yes. Okay, fine. Microsoft Word.
He probably shouldn't have said that, because what happened next, everybody knows where the exploit went, right?
Oh, yeah.
Not well. Spoiler if anyone's following that.
Well.
Right. So again, these 0 days transactions are happening behind the scenes. If anyone wants to go on the dark web forum and expect to see something about them, you're not going to find anything. If someone writes on a forum, "Hey, I have a 0 day," I would be very suspicious. Wary to believe them. But again, the low complexity, low reward things are the most proliferated. And as I said, these things can bring an organization death by 1,000 paper cuts. If for example, one of, and this isn't on this, but gaming cheats, because a lot of dark web actors are gamers. One of the most popular things on the deep and dark web are scripts for cheats in games, right? Like an aimbot. So if I'm using a first-person shooter, and I can run this program in the background that allows me to aim better, kill my opponents, and I win the game. Now, that's not really something that's being monetized so much. I mean, someone might sell this for whatever, but if you are producing a first-person shooter game and everyone's using a cheat that they download in the dark web, then the integrity of your game is being destroyed, and no one's going to want to play anymore. So just to understand again how one person using a gaming cheat, it's not going to hurt anyone really.
Right.
Half the people who are playing are using them. All of a sudden, an organization is facing a crisis if they're the owner of the game.
I'd name a lot of gaming companies out there that are dealing with a lot of crises right now.
Add this to the list.
Yeah, and so to kind of piggyback off what Dov was saying about the threat actors and threat groups and their abilities, this is something that we're kind of starting to see of threat actors joining forces. I believe DarkSide was aggressive in DDoS and also Avidon. And so what we're seeing here is we're seeing, criminal groups, like high-end criminal groups right underneath APT. They're launching these ransomware campaigns. And what's happening is that they're finding that people aren't paying, right? And that's what we tell people all the time: do not pay these ransomware authors. These ransomware authors are getting really mad. And so like the way that they're dealing with this is they're launching DDoS attacks against the infrastructure of the people that are encrypt, just kicking someone while they're down and asking them to come back to the table to continue negotiations of how much they're going to pay in extortion. As you can see on the Avidon side, they actually have countdowns on when these DDoS attacks are going to occur, which is a pretty good threat there. If you're already in crisis mode dealing with an incident, and all of a sudden another incident happens, this is going to add a lot of stress to the company. It's going to put a lot of pressure on them to actually follow through on a payment. And as we've seen in recent examples, even if you make the payment, it doesn't mean your decryptor is going to be faster in restoring from backups or anything. So it's kind of crazy that people are still paying them, but at the moment we have a really big problem with ransomware, and it's clear that they're joining forces and they're becoming a bigger threat as the days go on.
Yeah, I would rather describe it as an underground economy than more joining forces. They have so many quality stuff in that underground nowadays that a malware operator, he wants initial access. Well, he can buy some high quality accounts for RDP or VPN from a specific customer. So you have those lists out there that have the username, password, and then who is the target or the victim, and they can just cherry pick. Oh, I'm gonna take Colonial, for example, and just go in there. I'm just giving an example. I'm not saying that it happened like that, but they just RDP in, and then they buy a tool to do lateral movement, and then from there they're gonna install their ransomware. Once they are in a good position, then they're gonna ransom. If people do not react, they want to bring them back to the table. Well, they're gonna rent somebody who can do a DDoS attack. So they have an underground, and they can just rent all those elements and bring them all together. And as you already said, yeah, some of that money then from the dark side is being used on some of those marketplaces. They have other mules to wash that money, to make it clean so that it's really usable. So it's a whole underground economy, and I think that now we're at the point that ransomware has been able to use that many different parts of that underground economy that they have become very difficult to stop, because we're dealing with human operated attacks. It's not automated attacks anymore.
I want to say that the definition that we're running with on this is the triple extortion, correct? That this is another form of just doubling down, tripling down.
You actually, I found there's two definitions of triple extortion. We typically talk about triple extortion as being, you're gonna encrypt, and then you're gonna leak, and then you're gonna do DDoS attack to bring them back to the table. Actually, there's another definition of triple extortion, which is not only extort the victim itself, but the customers of the victim. So if you have if you attack the police, for example, well, you can extort the police, but if you have secret files of people who have done something wrong, well, you can also go to these people and extort them, and for a smaller amount of money. But so that's also triple extortion. So we're already at quadruple extortion, actually, if you count.
I was going to say octa extortion.
Multi-level.
For extortion. So another thing I would add also about threats joining forces is, as I said, the deep and dark web are a community of communities, and these actors learn from one another, right? So when was the first time that confidential data was being auctioned or high profile? I would say the shadow brokers, right? When they had the NSA tools that they were selling. And then everyone realized, hey, if auctioning confidential data makes a big media buzz, it's much more than just leaking it. And so actors do that now. And or leaking emails, internal documents. Where did that come from? The Sony hack, right? That these actors realized that when Sony was hacked in 2014, that internal emails from the CEO to other people in the company could be very embarrassing. And even though that's not the crown jewels, that's not a proprietary data that is going to sink the company, it sinks the CEO. It causes a huge public relations nightmare. So these actors are constantly learning from one another. They see what works, right? And so I think the first time we saw a ransomware group selling encrypted items was in December 2019. And then very, very quickly after, they all opened up these dedicated leak sites. It was such a quick transition that they said, wow, that works, that's great. And now we're all going to pull this threat type.
Oh yeah, but
to jump on that on a
yeah.
little subject here, right?
I think you have the same subject as I do.
Yeah, about media and PR. Yeah, so like it's a weird thing, right? A few years ago, we were heavily chasing Anonymous and all these DDoS groups like Apothos Squad and Lizard Squad and everybody else. And it was like every day we were all publishing something about these DDoS attacks. We were giving all the attention under the sun, and these groups loved it. They loved it so much that they took center stage on Twitter and outed themselves basically so they could get more attention. And the way that kind of stopped is I truly believe that a lot of these DDoS mitigation firms kind of all came to an agreement that we were not going to give these people so much attention. And so if you notice, like there's not a lot of people covering anonymous operations anymore. They are dead, but you don't want to give these criminals attention for them to have an ego that gets built up and they continue going to do more things. But yet when we deal with the ransomware issue, we're back at square one. That we have tons of journalists sitting on these PR sites every day, and you can tell, like you can see how many people look at these because they have trackers. 8,000 people view this post. Who are these 8,000 people? And then you go out and look at all these media outlets that are talking about the same thing. Oh, so and so dropped 10 clients today. So and so dropped 5 clients today. We're giving them so much attention that they are happy about this. There's pressure that's getting put on the client, the people that are compromised.
Yeah, exactly. So that is the
whole
whole point of
this. Is
yeah.
Stop talking about it.
A typical move we see by malware authors on the deep and dark web is they will post research reports by security researchers, companies, blah blah blah, rat, the next big threat, and they love it. They love that attention because that's marketing for them. Like, look, all the security researchers on Twitter are terrified of our malware. That means this is good. Buy it.
But it goes both ways. White hat people, they create malware and they create POCs and they put it on Twitter and they're like, oh, look at me. And then the criminals go run off and use it. And they're like, hey, look I did a great job. I created that. And it's like, no, you.
The meme cats. He just wanted to learn, right? No, again, that's a great example.
Only
right?
for education. Yeah.
Cobalt
Strike.
Underneath it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's now officially called a malware, right? Cobalt Strike, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So actually, if you search the dark web for the words "for educational uses only," you will find so much malware. It is one of my favorite search terms. Just search it and pull it up and see what I find, because you're gonna find a lot of stuff that's again, that's a nice cute little disclaimer, but it is what it is,
We should make a Radware shirt that says "for educational
purposes." Yeah, for education only.
Done.
Oh wow.
So if you want to actually look at how much is going on in the dark web, right? Because we talk about all of this, but at Sixgill, we're collecting 58 posts a minute, 71 replies to those posts, 753 drug-related discussions, right? All in a minute. 1,200 malicious chats in Telegram. Every 5 minutes, someone's discussing a vulnerability, sharing an IP address. That's 2.5 a minute. Links to downloading malware. So that's 170 links to downloading malware every single day, right? So this is malware hosted on underground file sharing sites that anyone can use. 3.5 email addresses shared. So that's contact information, 18 crypto wallets, and 220 credit cards offered for sale, compromised credit cards.
Wow.
Already 4 CVEs shared in the time that we have been talking.
Yeah.
No, I mean, if you stop and think about it, like, why are we losing this war? Just in 1 minute, just talking about that. We're already behind. It's crazy.
One CVE takes us 1 week to publish an alert on. That's the other side of the reality.
So there is so much that's happening on the deep and dark web every minute. It's again this staggering amount of information. So again, as I'm singly minded as an Intel analyst, right? What am I supposed to do about this? How can anybody possibly uh, live? You know, if I'm supposed to protect my organization and I need to read all of this, I need to follow all of this. Where do I spend my time? It's something that you know, there are a lot of partial answers, but it's you got to prioritize because this is a
Yeah.
lot of data.
Oh
I think
yeah.
about now we're collecting 5.5 million Intel items every single day. That's a huge amount. What do I do with all that data?
It's hard to go through as a research analyst too. I could
Mhm.
manually go to all these sites, but it would literally take me all day. It's very difficult to keep up with this
Oh,
stuff.
you can do 1 million in a day. That's very efficient, I think.
Pascal, I can do 1.2. Okay.
All right, we're gonna give you 24 hours and starting now. So so looking more closely though, what are we not going to find on the dark web? Because this is also important, right? And we've been talking about some of these, but let's just nail it in because as I said, there's a lot of mystique and things surrounding it. So APTs, government actors and their actions, as I said, we're not going to find a lot about. We're not going to find the real world identities. No one's going to give their actual name and
You are
addresses
not
if
gonna
someone.
find them, but that doesn't mean they are not there, right?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
obviously, if someone's being doxxed, that's the point, right? But
Yeah.
no one's going to voluntarily give this out.
Mhm.
We're not going to find those free military grade 0 days and TTPs, right? The top actors are not going to share exactly how they do it because why would they? That's their money making machine. You know, they're not going to give it away. And we're not going to find free high quality products from attacks, right? Meaning we're not going to find someone distributing you know, credentials. So for example, we'll find Netflix credentials given out for free or Disney Plus credentials. We're not going to find bank credentials given out for free because no one's going to
You
give
are a
those away for
specialist
free when you can sell them.
you are a specialist in Netflix and Disney Plus
Yeah,
credentials, I
okay. Well,
believe, because you have been mentioning it already two
spoiler, that's my
times.
next
Uh,
report coming out, so that's been on my
uh.
mind.
So
If
guys,
if yeah,
in the chat, if you need Netflix or Disney Plus credentials, just I
absolutely.
hook you up.
Now, Dov, correct me if I'm wrong here, but most of these people, when they offer something free on the darknet, it's because they're trying to build credibility, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So there's always a motivation.
Or they
And
include a
here
malicious thing. Yeah.
and this is what it is,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
spirit of anonymity in commerce, right? I want to build up myself on a forum. I want credibility. How do or sorry, cred. So how do I do that, right? I need to show that I am capable of, you know, hacking, of gaining compromised data, classified data. So one way of doing that is showing it for free. And if I share a dump of 10,000, again, okay, Spotify credentials, didn't see that one coming, then people will say, wow, you're amazing, thank you so much, blah blah blah. People might DM me, how did you do this? Can you get now bank credentials? I have a big job I want to do. And so giving a freebie is a lead towards someone building up their reputation and then going on to bigger and better things.
Right.
So on the dark web we find chatter about news and developments. So these are things that actors discuss the news, right? If there's a big high profile ransomware attack, they will be discussing this on the deep and dark web. Many just because they're interested in it from a, you know, hobbyist perspective, and many because that's really cool. How do I do that? They're talking about defensive measures and offensive TTPs. So many of them, if I wanted to hack, you know, a PayPal account, what would I need to do? Something that's a little bit innocuous, or someone will just write, "Hey, how can I hack PayPal?" Um, there are underground identities. So you have contact information. People will share, you know, as I said, Telegram addresses, Jabber, ICQ. They'll share their crypto wallets. They'll have aliases. And if you can follow these actors and track them over time, you can build a serious profile of all of these little leads of who they are. From there, law enforcement might be able to piece that together and build enough of a case. You have software as a service. You have ransomware or malware that's constantly being updated. Actors are proud of their work, just like
I would call it crimeware as a service. That's what you mean, right?
Exactly. Crimeware as a service, but again, it's a certain element of pride, right? Just like our developers have their sprints every 2 weeks, and they add features, and they have customer requests for more features, and they think about how do we out feature our competition. Dark web actors are doing the same thing. They're thinking just like software developers and regular companies of how do I improve this? What features are people asking for? How do we beat the competition? Then we see attacks as a service. So that is along the lines of, hey, who wants, I can hack your ex-girlfriend's Instagram account. That we see plenty of. But we'll also see elements of attacks in the supply chain, right? So someone, again, selling initial access to an endpoint, or selling access to a shell, or compromised domain, something, or IP address. And so therefore an actor can string together a very sophisticated attack by just going shopping and buying all the elements needed in the attack chain. And then lastly, we have the products of attacks. As I said, compromised credit cards, compromised credentials, anything that these actors are harvesting from an attack, so they're putting for sale. So credit card fraud, right? One way of telling how widespread is credit card fraud, we might not find so much on the pre-attack area of credit card sniffers, for example, but we can look at how many credit cards are for sale, and then we can understand what is the level of credit card attacks, and maybe how does this half of the year compare to the first half of the year. Okay, so now I want to actually focus on participation in deep and dark web forums, because I wanted to know, right, how big is the dark web? This is a research report that I did several months ago, where I wanted to see, how many actors are there, right? We talk about the deep and dark web again as this massive realm, this this iceberg under the surface, but what's going on? So I analyzed 5 leading forums. I'm not going to name them by name. That's our policy. But these are well-known underground forums, and I found something quite interesting, that all grew exponentially. And that's very interesting because it wasn't this incremental, they added a few users, they added 10 users every month over, these are both from 2015. They grew really quickly. They started with 0 users, and again, this bottom one, we're talking about 30,000 users per month. So a user, by the way, and for this definition, is not someone who has a username and password. A user means someone who actually wrote something on the forum, a participant. So this is a lot of people who are active in these forums. Now, the average growth rate for these forums, we found one forum that grew about 9.2% every single month, which is insane. That's very exponential, and some of them grew a little bit less. But this shows that there's a word of mouth element, that people are always looking for the newest, hottest party, right? No one wants to be everyone wants to get to the party before it's cool. No one wants to stay there too late when everyone's already left. So that's happening at forums as well. And people look for where's the action at, where's the best the latest cybercrime going on, and wherever it is, they flock to it.
What do you expect?
I really feel that a lot of this has to be.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I really feel like a lot of this has to do with the advertisement and media spotlight that a lot of these forums get, like exploit and XSS, right? You see them on Twitter, you see them being talked about by every journalist out there. It's not really much of a secret anymore, right? Like, I think that's kind of contributes to the popularity of some of these forums.
Absolutely.
The forum is unknown and underground, or it has special, features to get accepted as a member into it. It's been a long time since I created my exploit account, but I believe at one point in time it was very difficult to actually get an exploit account. You had to have conversations with the admin, like Russian slang, and there are certain hurdles that they put there to make it difficult to get in. But I think some of these other ones are very, very open, like a book.
Yeah. Those are the generic ones, yeah, the ones with most of the trash and the hype on it, I would say, right?
Yeah, and I totally agree with the media coverage, right? It creates this snowball effect, right, where they just get bigger and bigger, and everyone reads about it, and everyone hears about it, and more people join. So actually, one interesting thing though is that one forum's growth, right? So I was tracking the top 5 cybercrime forums. It did not come at the expense of another. So you didn't see that, for example, one forum was peaking and then it went down as another forum began to peak, and then that went down as another one. So I would say that the total participation in the underground is growing, right? Meaning, as time goes on, the deep and dark web has gone from this really small mystique niche into something that's much more mainstream. More and more people are joining it, and maybe they have accounts on, maybe a lot of these are parallel accounts on different
I
forums,
Well,
but more people are joining it.
yeah,
that's what I was gonna
I
say. Is, sorry, no,
go.
sorry to cut you off again, Pascal. I default to you this time.
I never can say anything here. You're always cutting me off.
Because you're in the corner.
Yes. No, I was gonna say I have the feeling that people are much more aware about privacy as well in the last 2-3 years. So that might also be related, that as people become more aware, they will make more use of those tools as well. So I'm not sure that's 100% criminal related or related to people appreciating privacy and anonymity, because with all the tools that we have, what WhatsApp did recently, people went away from WhatsApp. They all go to Signal and to Telegram, just because they're sharing contacts now. So people are becoming much more aware of that. So that is also one trend that I think should be taken into account.
Exactly. So
Yeah,
right. So when I've said deep and dark web, right, that's not necessarily the underground. So
Mhm.
these are deep and dark web forums, right? The top one has 120,000 actors at its peak in 1 month. 120,000 different users posted on this forum. Not all of those are criminal. Far from it. Right? As I said, they're discussing news. They're discussing cryptocurrency, gaming, things like that, right? So these forums are places for legitimate mainstream discussions. They're discussing politics. I've actually found, surprisingly, some of the most civil, well thought out, intelligent political discussions about the US political situation on dark web
yeah.
forums. And I was so impressed and disappointed with the rest of the world.
No, I was going to say, from an intelligence perspective, it must be really cool to watch the threat actors move from not only site to site, but also their rate of activity on these sites, right? Like it's just showing in 1 month there was 120,000 posts, active users. That's
Yep.
incredible.
Yep.
And you kind of want to start looking at like what happened that month. It's very, very cool stuff.
So you want to take a guess what happened in April 2020, April
Yeah,
2020?
yeah. That's a big peak there
And
for both forums.
I don't know. I would say there's a lot of political issues that come up as a U.S. citizen.
So
It's not only US,
so
you know.
well, so first of all, okay,
I'm
so I mean,
biased.
no, but these were the COVID lockdowns, right?
Mhm.
More
Okay.
people, right? I mean, look at those spikes in all 5
Yeah.
forums. It wasn't pretty to put them all in one slide, but all 5 forums we analyzed all peaked at that time. This is the COVID bump, I would say. People were stuck at home; they had nothing to do. Um, a lot of people are scared, a lot of people are curious, and so hey, I'll log into the dark web. So a lot of users joined these
I
forums
wonder where
during
those
these
people
lockdowns.
are who had nothing to do, because I cannot imagine not having anything to do in the last 2 years since
That was
COVID
my
hit.
exactly. So, but you see, it reverted afterwards, right? So once the lockdowns really ended in the summer, late summer in America, it really reverted back down. A lot of people logged in, dabbled in it, saw what it was about, and then they left, which is also interesting, right? It didn't maintain that growth rate. As you can see, there's a trend line, and it
Nothing
went
to
way
win
below.
here. No.
I was gonna say they went onto the Darknet looking for free Netflix
Yeah,
accounts, and they found a
yeah.
lot more entertaining things going on over
Yeah.
there.
So
And
fine.
they
So
logged on,
also,
and they got a call from the police saying, "Hey,
so
why you're watching
also
Netflix?"
So spoiler, you heard it here first, but the number of compromised Netflix accounts and Disney Plus accounts peaked also during March and April. That
Yeah.
was
Oh
when there
wow.
were the most compromised accounts at that
Yeah.
time. As I said, it was also, we saw this with drugs, we saw this with PayPal money laundering. In almost every report that we did, March and April were the yearly all-time high for everything,
Wow.
which is very, very cool. Oh, another RDP connections, right? The number of compromised RDP
Mhm.
connections being sold on the deep and dark web
Yeah.
spiked during that time. That is both so logical because this is when everyone was working remotely without any real security procedure involved. So
Many
a lot of
people forgot their
companies,
password, so they logged
right?
into
So
the dark web to recover
a
their
lot,
password, right?
exactly. A lot of companies just opened up their RDP connections, and so dark web actors said, "Hey, this is great. We can just crack RDP." And so we saw these RDP markets exploded during this time. Terrifying. So now,
Yeah.
how active are the average actors, right? I wanted to see, is the average, are most actors more or less the same in terms of activity, or are there, leaders that are super active and then people that a little bit less? So what I found on these forums is 85% of forum actors contributed 10 or fewer posts. I would say probably if I had access to Twitter's backend, it would probably look very similar, right? The majority of people on Twitter are not writing tens of thousands of tweets. The majority of people on Twitter are, going on to read things, to peruse, to see what's going on, but they're not super active. They're more there to read and learn. I would say very similar with these forums, right? We only have 0.7% of forum actors that have written more than 100 posts in the whole half of a year. 53% of them have only written 2 to 10 posts, 13% only 1 post. So there's a very large distribution in terms of activity amongst these forum actors. Also, for example, that is unique to the dark web. A lot of these could be burner accounts. I want to create an account so I could just post one thing. I don't want anyone to track who I am, link my identities and activities together. So I go on, I post something about some, heist that I have planned, and then that's it. I don't use that account anymore. So we obviously need to keep in mind that's definitely happening as well.
Yeah.
Now, the top actors had a big impact. The top decile, right? So the top 10% of actors accounted for 59% of the posts, and the second decile was 14%. And this is the difference from one half to the other for all 5 forums. So this is the Pareto principle, right? That 80% here is 70%. Sorry, here, yeah, sorry, 74%. But you have 80% contributing 20% and 20% contributing 80%, and we really see that. So on these forums, we have, as I was talking about before, the top actors with the reputations, with the activities, who are known to everybody, who are trusted, and those are the most active. And the bottom 80% are quite quiet. And again, they might just be chiming in on a conversation. They might be one thing that happens a lot, no one on these forums wants to be called a script kiddie or skid or a noob or whatever. So if I'm just logging in for the first time and I have, a desire to respond to a conversation, I might write something and then no, I don't want to be called out and be called stupid or whatever, so I delete it. And then finally maybe I'll build up the confidence and I'll be able to chime in. So that's happening as well. But again, we see that it's fairly consistent in terms of how much the top decile is contributing to posts.
That's very interesting.
So there is peer pressure in those groups. Who would have thought that?
And the fear of offset.
I lead, man.
Yeah.
I'd actually be very interested in tracking the people that just post one post and disappear. To me, that's showing, an advanced skill set and a very interesting outlook on how to operate in the darknet.
Could be burner accounts as well, many of them.
Absolutely right. Meaning,
yeah,
that's a great question.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say, it could be a burner account, but that's even another red flag for me to follow, type of thing.
Absolutely.
Right. Meaning, is it a burner account where is it? I would say a post from an actor indicating some sort of highly sophisticated cybercrime, right? So that's definitely, I would say that's a burner account. Versus, is it just again, someone chiming in about their favorite Fortnite mod, which whenever those are dabbling.
Look at my Roblox avatar.
Exactly. So now, so what happened to forum participation in 2020? Because 2020 was a watershed year in many ways, and we don't want to repeat this year, obviously, but it happened. So all 5 forums that we researched hit their all-time highs during March and May, in parallel with the COVID lockdowns, as I said. Now, here's the statistic. Overall, during COVID lockdowns in these 5 forums, there were 268,610 more unique users than there had been in January, right? So in 3-4 months, we're looking at 270,000, 44% increase in the number of users in these forums. That's insane. I mean, this is already an amount that I'm sure the site administrators have to deal with the extra traffic, right? This is already a technical challenge for these sites. As I said, new users could have logged in because of boredom or because of the opportunities that they heard of COVID-era cybercrime. But again, we see just this massive growth of forum participation during those lockdowns. Now, in the third forum under investigation, the middle range of actors, right? So these actors who are contributing, I believe it was 50 to 100 posts, increased 3,500%, meaning the actors in this forum are participating more than they had been before. This also was the forum with a 9% monthly growth rate, and it also had a 74% spike in actors because of COVID. So that's a forum in very good health, right? This is a forum which is snowballing, which people know about it. People are talking about it. It might be getting media coverage as well. It's the big. Oh, sorry, it's 11 to 50 posts. I have the graph here. Right. This is a forum that the actors who are on the forum are becoming more active, which I say is a very good sign. Right. You always want your users to be participating more. So we can use this analysis of the number of unique actors and how active they are, and track this over time. And then as an Intel analyst, I know which forums are on the upswing and which ones might be stagnant and which ones are already in decline. And this is important for me because, as I said, I can't read everything. I don't know everything that's happening. But if I can now look at where the party is, where it's starting, I can maybe focus my efforts on that. And again, as long as I'm more focused, then I can be more aware of what's going on.
That's very interesting. There's a lot of cool things that you can find and do on the darknet, especially when you have insight like you all do. I mean, it's very, very cool to have that kind of perspective and understand where these criminals are going and what websites they're sitting on and the topics they're talking about.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Very, very useful. Very, very useful as an Intel analyst.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of fun with our API. I have DDoSed it once. I got an angry email from our Slack message from our DevOps that I'm taxing it too much, but I said this is too cool data. I can't stop right now when I'm in the middle of a business.
You were taxing it too much. You didn't DDoS it.
I did, sorry, not DDoS, just DOS. Yeah, they were wondering why all of a sudden my user had so much.
A self-inflicted DDoS. By the way, do you know the other company who posted a report on a self-inflicted DDoS?
No, who is that?
Netflix. Your favorite.
It all comes full circle on the
dark
web.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, so it's been 1 hour and 35 minutes. Wow. Time flies when you're having fun, I would say. Dov, thank you very much for joining us. It was super.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it was super having you. I had tons of fun. I learned a lot. I'm sure that the people, our audience live, and also the people watching afterwards will agree with me that there's so much information out there that you covered. And there's actually more. So I know that you have a report coming up. So first of all, I will put the links below to Cybersixgill, to Dov's blog or the report better, that he used for this presentation. But I'm sure that we will see you again, because you were already mentioning about something about Netflix, I believe, and Disney Plus. So
dangled it enough,
and another one to throw out there, if you're really interested in this subject, Dov and I are going to be doing a presentation, I think it's June 15th at SOCSDoc 2021, on a similar subject about the dark web. So if you want to hear more and engage in conversation, I definitely suggest tuning into that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we will have Dov. We will see you. I hope that you will want to come back at least.
I'm glad I passed the threshold that I got a second invite.
Oh, no,
that's how
absolutely.
You're happy.
No. So I'm sure you will be back, and we will have more fascinating stories to tell. So for me,
there's so many of them.
Yeah. So
awesome.
Thank you very much for everyone for joining us. Thank you for hitting the forum, including Yeemate. Yeah, Yeemate. You're welcome. But this will be available after the live stream on demand. I will update the links below. I'm always referring to the links below, but people who are watching right now will see that there's nothing below. So I will put the links there. I assure you, I will also put in the chapter so that you have more convenient access. It has been a long webinar, but I think it's worth it, scrubbing through the data and rewatching some of the talks. And anyway, so hope to see you next time again on the next month's Threat Researchers Live, which will be the last Thursday of June. Yeah. So thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.